All right, I think we're ready to start. Appreciate you guys all being here on this snowy morning. It's exciting to be in this new space. Appreciate everyone who came out yesterday. We had a great turnout for the workday, so that was awesome. All right, so this is my last week teaching. After this week, Stephen Lee is going to fill in a little bit, and then Jeremy, I believe, is up after that. But we're going to finish out today Proverbs on talking about the tongue, about our words, which is a huge theme in Proverbs, so I didn't want to leave it without covering that one. So let's pray, and we'll get started. Lord, we're so thankful, Lord, for you, so thankful for your word, so thankful for the opportunity just to be here together and to study it, Lord. And we just pray that as we do so, God, that it wouldn't just affect our minds, but also our hearts. And Lord, that we would be seeking to put into practice the things we learn here, not in our own strength, but through the power of Christ. Lord, we ask it all in his name. Amen. All right, so main takeaway for today is going to be that God's wisdom makes us graciously intentional with our tongues. I had to think about a little bit how to word that. So graciously, I'm taking that largely from Ephesians 4, which we'll reference later. Our words should be gracious, seasoned with salt. And then the intentional part, it just comes from the fact that Proverbs really helps us think about the intentions behind the words we use, whether they be good intentions, malicious intentions, but sometimes just a lack of intentionality, a carelessness can cause great problems. So God's wisdom makes us graciously intentional with our tongue. So I've got quite a few there. You'll notice there's 3 pages. We're not going to cover everything. That last page, I might turn to it if I'm in the mood, but it's just a bunch of quotes from Ray Ortland on his the chapter in his commentary on Proverbs on the tongue. It was really, really good. And there was a ton of stuff that I wished I had time to share that I knew I didn't. So I was like, I'll just type these up and you guys can read those later if you're interested. All right, so that being said, number 1, wisdom knows that words have good and bad consequences. That's kind of the baseline starting point. Wisdom knows that what I say has consequences, whether for good or for bad. So let's turn to Proverbs chapter 13 and scoot through a few of these. Let's look at Proverbs 13, verse 2. It says, "From the fruit of his mouth a man eats what is good, but the desire of the treacherous is for violence." All right, so there's a good result and a bad result, right? The mouth of a man, the fruit of his mouth eats what is good, but the desire of the treacherous for violence. Verse 3, "Whoever guards his mouth preserves his life." That's a good thing. That's a good result. "Whoever guards his mouth preserves his life, but he who opens wide his lips comes to ruin," right? I think he means someone who opens wide their lips without self-control. There is a lot of negative stuff that comes as a result of that. 14 verse 3, "By the mouth of a fool comes a rod for his back, but the lips of the wise will preserve them," right? What we say can get us a beating, is what Proverbs has said. Some of you have witnessed that in real time in your lives. But the lips of the wise will preserve them on the positive side. Let's keep looking. Proverbs 18:6. "A fool's lips walk into a fight, and his mouth invites a beating." There it is again. "A fool's mouth is his ruin, and his lips are a snare to his soul." Let's go on to verse 21 here. "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits." Now, this verse has been kind of hijacked by the hyper-charismatic movement to say, like, what you say creates reality kind of thing. That's not obviously what it's talking about. What it's saying is that our words have an effect, right? And that effect will either be life-giving or death-giving to other people and even to ourselves. One more on this one, 21, 23. Flip forward a couple chapters. "Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble." There's a good consequence. Lastly, 25, 23. I might have had the wrong one. No, that's it. 23. "The north wind brings forth rain, and a backbiting tongue angry looks." I kind of like the cause and effect thing here, right? If there's a north wind, what's going to happen? At least in this guy's world, there's going to be rain. And if there's a backbiting tongue, what's going to happen? There's going to be anger that comes as a result of that. So wisdom knows that our words have good and bad consequences. So let's just throw it out there to you guys for a moment. What are some of the good and bad consequences of our words? What are some things that come to mind to you specifically? Randy has the mic for whoever is feeling talkative. So does Tim. Yeah, Wayne.
I think that we're always supposed to be trying to edify.
Yeah.
However, there are times when even trying to edify someone, usually because of their own guilt, they take it the wrong way. So it ends up being negative instead of positive.
Sure, yeah. So then positive of that is someone being edified, obviously. Yeah, and I would still say in a way, it's negative for us because it doesn't feel good to have someone not respond well, but that still could turn out to be a positive thing. Sometimes when someone reacts that way, it's because we've gotten through to them. You know what I mean? Like, because you said they're aware of what's going on. Yeah, it's good. What else? Just some common good and bad consequences that come from our words.
One of the things is when somebody remembers something that you said a while ago,
Yeah.
somehow holds on to that for a long time.
Yeah.
So there's some lasting effect to a careless word. And just think of our kids, and they would remember something that we said in a careless way 8 or 10 years ago. And so there's a long lasting, I think James talks about that as well. There's a long lasting effect, like a poison that remains even on a lower level in somebody's life. And so.
Yeah, for sure. And on the positive side of that, I can still remember good things my parents said to me when I was growing up, you know what I mean? So those things last as well, yeah. Anybody else? Common good and bad consequences. Stephen.
It just reveals the overflow of your heart.
Yeah.
So what you've been pondering, what you've been storing up, good or bad, that's the consequences, what's overflowing of your heart. And you can be stewing on it, but then when it's said, it now has to be dealt with in tangible ways.
Yeah. Yep, and that's really the most important part is what does this say about my heart? Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? Should I be encouraged by what's coming out, or should I take a step back and ask the Lord to help me to reevaluate? Yeah. All right, so yeah, we all understand that, I think. Wisdom knows that words have good and bad consequences, right? What we say is not neutral, right? It has an effect. Number 2, all right, how else does wisdom make us graciously intentional with our tongues? Well, number 2, wisdom listens and ponders first. Okay, wisdom listens and ponders before speaking. I think this is really helpful, and it's in the Proverbs several times. Let's go to 15, verse 28. It says, the part of the righteous ponders how to answer. A righteous person, which again in Proverbs, the righteous person and the wise person are almost, synonymous. That person ponders how to answer. Before they open their mouth and reply, they take a step back and say, what's the best way to respond to this? But the mouth of the wicked pours out evil things. You notice that language, pours out. Again, there's kind of a lack of restraint, a lack of self-control going on. 18, verse 13. This one kind of hurts a little bit. If one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame. I have done that many times, right? Given an answer before I really heard the person, right? And we've all experienced the other side of that, haven't we? Right? Where we're trying to tell someone something, ask for some advice, share our heart with them, and they respond in a way that they mean well, maybe, but it's like I don't think you really heard me. I don't think you really heard what I was saying, right? And Proverbs is advising us against that. One more here would be 29, verse 20. Let's flip to there. Do you see a man who is hasty in his words? There is more hope for a fool than for him. Hastiness in giving an answer and letting words out can lead to some dire consequences. What are some common situations where we're tempted to speak before we've really listened? What comes to mind? Yeah, Lonnie.
I don't want to say that, like, we're all kind of biblical counselors in the sense that when we're speaking
Yeah.
to somebody, we're counseling them. So I would say if somebody's looking for counsel or reflection, sometimes we can jump and think we know and give them an answer without pondering, praying, reflecting, or waiting.
Yeah, agreed. Now, there's been times where, yeah, in that situation, someone has come to me for advice. And so, again, sometimes you mean well, you're eager to help them out, or you see them going down the wrong direction, and you just want to, let me just get in there and fix your problems, you know what I mean? But yeah, listening, really understanding what they're saying, it's very important, yeah. Yeah, Brad.
Maybe when we disagree with somebody, we disagree
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, that can be a really tempting one, right? Especially if it's a disagreement that produces a level of, I don't know, emotion in our hearts, you know what I mean? Self-control there can be difficult, yeah. Andrew?
One place in my life is when I think I know what the person's going to say.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're right and sometimes you're not. But I know, especially with my kids, I can exasperate them because I want to answer because it's taking them a while to get it out, and I know where it's going, so I
Yeah.
just answer the question.
Yeah.
But we can do that with adults too.
For
not
sure.
really let them finish speaking, which is disrespectful.
Yeah.
Dishonoring.
Yep, start finishing people's sentences for them. And it's always great when you finish it and then you had it wrong, you know what I mean? The Lord uses that to humble us. Anything else? Morgan? Oh,
What? Oh, okay. I was like,
don't be
looking the wrong
hasty
way.
to speak, you gotta wait for the
Yeah,
mic.
okay. I was like, wait. I think we do this with grieving people a lot sometimes. Because sometimes someone who's really grieving, they'll say a lot of maybe technically incorrect things, right? Because it's kind of tempting to jump on that and be like, well, no, you need to see God this way. And that's true, right? There really might be, that might be the root of what's going on. But sometimes they're just trying to express confusion on like, I know God is good, but it doesn't feel like he's good in this situation to me right now. How do I make, you know what I mean? It's like if we don't let people finish and ask good follow-up questions, we might completely misdiagnose and miss an opportunity to grieve with those who grieve
Sure,
and show them Jesus and then point them to Christ and the truth, right? But
yeah. Yeah, we're gonna come back to that theme a little bit, the importance of weeping with those who weep. And yeah, the person, they may need truth, but there's also the question of, is this the right time, right, to give that to them? And sometimes it is. Sometimes you just have to lean in and, counsel them right in the moment, but sometimes it's best to wait a little bit past the initial conversation there. DeShanna, go ahead.
Well, I thought I was going to be free to share this because McKenna and Gavin weren't here, but lo and behold,
Uh-oh.
look who just walked in.
Leave now, Gavin.
No, but sometimes
Get
we only get half of the story. We walk in and we witness something, so we think that we know best and we know what has happened, but we didn't see the precursors. And I did that a lot in parenting, and I remember one particular time that McKenna was like, I'm always in trouble and you never get him in trouble. And I was like, well, that's because you're screaming at him and he's not screaming at you. And she's like, he started it, Mom. He always starts it. And I said, no, he doesn't. And she said, ask him. And so I did. And Gavin's like, yeah. And I was like, wow, you little sneak. How in the world? But I realized that for years probably I had been coming down hard on one kid.
Sure.
Because I heard it and I couldn't oversee it, but I didn't see little brother's antics going on beforehand. You
Yeah.
know?
he turned out great.
He did turn out
They
great.
both
He
did.
And if he was a sneak, he was an honest sneak. So at least he had that going for him. Wayne, go.
I have been married long enough, 58 years, to learn through experience that my best thing to prevent arguments or disagreements is if I stop before I say something and think to myself, how is she going to take this? Because in many cases, if I go ahead and don't think that and say it, it's taken the wrong way and it causes problems. But if you just stop and think, how is the other person going to, or what other way could I say it that would be more edifying?
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. All right, yeah, okay, I think we get it. Wisdom listens and ponders first. Number 3, wisdom knows, this goes right into what a lot of you guys are just bringing up. Number 3, wisdom knows that tone, timing, and tact matter. All right, we don't want to make too much of those things, but we also don't want to make too little. And Proverbs was here to help us with that. So let's go to Proverbs 15, right? Tone, obviously tone of voice, timing, when we say things, and then tact, right? Trying to be wise about the very words that we use as we talk to someone. Okay, Proverbs 15, verse 1. This kind of goes back and forth between those 3 words that I mentioned. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. All right, again, this is a book of Proverbs, right? It's not saying this is how it is 100% of the time. Sometimes you give a soft, gentle answer and the person still ends up angry. But he's saying most of the time, a good way to avoid anger, just, escalating between 2 people, is to respond with gentleness and with kindness, right? I can say, in my own marriage, right, the times that Morgan and I have gotten into some heated debates, shall we say, oftentimes are when one of us started to, raise the voice a little bit, right, and to let the anger rise, and that feeds the other person. So we've all seen this work out, right, in our daily lives. Verse 4, a gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit. So a gentle tongue, a tongue with gentleness, is a tree of life. Perverseness in it breaks the spirit. Have you ever seen someone say something to someone and it break their spirit? And I don't mean like in a good, like, humbleness before the Lord kind of way. I mean like really just broke this person in a not good way, right? And probably we've all said things that have done that or had things said to us that have done that. It's really sad to see that happen. Let's go on to verse 23 here. Or we just were at 23. No, we weren't. 23. I'm losing my spot already. Yeah, okay. 23. To make an apt answer is a joy to a man, and a word in season, how good it is. Okay, this one kind of hits on both being tactful and timing. An apt answer. I think you could also say a fitting answer, right? An answer that actually fits what this person has said, is what they need to hear right now. And then I like the lines, next line, a word in season, how good it is, right? For the particular season that this person is in, this is a good thing from God's word for them to hear, right? And there are other times where it would be a word out of season, where maybe it is true, maybe it is good, it just might not be the best time for them to hear that right now, and it takes wisdom to know the difference. Let's go to chapter 16, verse 23. The heart of the wise makes his speech judicious. I think that means he judges carefully in advance, okay, what he's about to say. The heart of the wise makes his speech judicious, and notice, and adds persuasiveness to his lips, right? There's a way to talk that in general, right, not all the time, but in general, makes us more persuasive. 24, gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body. Gracious words, right, they're appealing like honey. What's the saying that your grandma always says? You catch more flies with honey than with, what was it? Yes, catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, right? There you go. That's the modern version. Let's go on to chapter 25. Skip forward quite a ways. 11 and 12. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver, right? There it is, a word fitly spoken. Something said well, right? In a good way at the right time. It's like apples of gold in a setting of silver. Like a gold ring or an ornament of gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. Notice, it doesn't just say a reprover, a wise reprover, someone who loves someone enough to call them out on something, but to do it in a way that's wise, right? And they're aware of the way in which they're doing it. Jump forward to verse 15. With patience, I like this one. With patience, a ruler may be persuaded, and a soft tongue will break a bone. I like how it says that. A soft tongue will break a bone. We've probably all experienced times where we wanted to go into a conversation, with guns blazing, just, letting them have it. And but God got a hold of our hearts. We went in with gentleness, with a soft answer, and we were surprised at how willing the person ended up being to listen to us, right? Because we weren't coming at them in anger or aggressively or whatever. I think that's kind of what this is getting at. And then verse 20, whoever sings songs to a heavy heart, this is about timing, whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day and like vinegar on soda. It's good to sing songs, right? I especially believe that, right? It's good to point people to the joy of the Lord and to cheerfulness and all these things, but he's saying there's a time where to try to come in and make someone just be happy right now is like taking off a garment on a cold day, right? And we need to learn to weep with those who weep, come alongside them, help them focus on the right truth and at the right time, all right? So let's look at a couple cross references. 25:11, if you go back there, word fitly spoken. That reminds me of Ephesians 4. Let no corrupting, 4:29. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion. Notice that, as fits the occasion. There are some things, again, that they're good to say. They just don't fit this occasion. That it may give grace to those who hear. That's the goal, right? That it's going to give grace to this person right where they're at in this particular spot. 25:20, singing songs to a heavy heart. I already mentioned it, Romans 12:15. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep, right? We need to do our best to rejoice with people who are happy about things, to weep with people who are going through a hard time, to let that influence our words. So here's John Kitchen, whose commentary I reference all the time. It says, a wrong answer given when a correct answer is sought is misleading. A right answer given at the wrong time may be well-intentioned and technically correct, but damaging. The right answer at the right time is priceless. I think that's well said. So this is just a rhetorical question. You guys don't need to answer it out loud, but I'd say let's take a moment to reflect. Are there maybe some people in our lives right now who we've been saying the right things to, maybe just in the wrong way? Or that may be something that we prayerfully consider. Someone in our life that we're saying the right things to, but maybe we're just not going about it in the wisest way. All right, number 4. This is kind of related, but I made it a separate thing. Number 4, wisdom holds back. Proverbs has a lot to say about not saying stuff, all right? Wisdom holds back. Go to Proverbs 10, verse 19. When words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent, right? When words are many, meaning again, they're being just let out without intentionality, without self-control, you will always find transgression there, is what the proverb is saying. But the person who restrains his lips is prudent, right? And the word prudent in Proverbs has to talk, it means being aware of what the consequences of what my actions are going to be, right? And planning accordingly. Chapter 12, verse 18. This one's convicting. There is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts. Notice, it doesn't necessarily say that this person is like malicious. Okay, they're just rash. They're just saying stuff without thinking about it first. There is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Right? I think we've all experienced that. Let's go on to 17, verse 9. Whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats the matter separates close friends. Okay, here's what I think is going on here. Whoever covers an offense, I think he's talking about someone is aware that someone else has done something wrong, right? We're not told whether they're repentant about it or not, but he's saying the person who has the other person's best interest in mind seeks to show love to that person by not spreading it all around for other people to know about if they don't need to know about it, right? They keep the matter private as much as possible, right? But then notice the other side. Whoever repeats the matter, on the other hand, and again, doesn't necessarily even say with malicious intention, but someone who is unwise and talks about, hey, did you hear about so-and-so? Be praying for them kind of thing. That can separate close friends. That's what Proverbs says. And we've all seen that before, haven't we? We'll come back to it in a moment, but it makes me think of Jesus' wisdom on church discipline, right? When you first go and confront someone, who are you supposed to keep it between? Between you and him alone, right? And you keep it there as long as possible unless things don't go well and you have to start bringing in other people, right? We'll come back to that. Let's keep going, though. Chapter 25, verse 20. Whoever sings, I already read this one. What in the world am I doing here? Okay, sorry about that. Skip that. 26, verse 4. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. We're going to hold off on the next verse. It's interesting that they're side by side. We'll come back to verse 5 in a minute. But answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. There are times where someone says something to us very foolish, and we would like to say something back, and it would actually be better to not say anything at all, right? And to not engage. Why? Lest you become like him yourself. Again, we've all experienced this, where you enter into something thinking, okay, that was foolish for that person to say that. I'm gonna help them out, correct them, whatever. Then we go into it, and 5 minutes later, we realize that just as much foolishness is spewing out of our mouths and out of our hearts. I think that's what he's talking about. I don't need to tell you guys this, but you see this on social media all the time. Okay, folks getting into debates that are maybe start off well intentioned, but before you know it, 30 comments down, it's hard to tell who's the fool and who's not at that point. All right, let's move on to chapter 27, verse 2. Let another praise you, and not your own mouth. A stranger, not your own lips. All right, when it comes to pointing out stuff you've done well, it's best to keep your mouth closed. Let somebody else do that. Chapter 30, verse 32 and 33. If you've been foolish, exalting yourself, or if you've been devising evil, notice this: put your hand on your mouth. Cover your mouth so you can't talk. For pressing milk produces curds, pressing the nose produces blood, pressing anger produces strife. Again, Proverbs has a lot about just kind of cause and effect, right? As much as we want to at times, I think Stephen kind of mentioned this last week, want to live in our own reality and think that we can do certain things without consequences. Proverbs is here to say, no, this is how God made the world. This is how it works, and this is how to live wisely in light of that, right? If you press the nose, it'll produce blood. If you throw out angry words, it's going to produce strife. All right, a couple of cross references. I already mentioned Matthew 18. If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have gained your brother. Again, when we start off, when it comes to needing to confront someone about sin in their life, we want to keep that as private as possible. And I'll just say as a quick side note, it can be really tempting in those times, right out of the gate, oftentimes with good intentions, to want to ask a lot of other people sometimes about it, right? To be like, hey, I'm thinking about talking to so-and-so. I'm wondering, if you've heard about this. I'm not saying there's never a time to do that. Sometimes you really do need to talk to someone else who's close to the person, close to the situation. But I don't think that should ever be our default. Because what happens if we make that our default? What happens? Rumors get started, right? And rumors spread very quickly in that way, even if the intention was never to hurt somebody. So again, there's just a lot of wisdom in what Jesus says. Matthew 7:6. This goes to the whole don't answer a fool according to his folly, lest you become like him yourself. Jesus has that kind of famous passage, do not give dogs what is holy, do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you, right? Now, I don't think Jesus is calling people pigs here, right? But I do think he's saying, hey, there's a time when speaking up, even if you're saying the right thing, it might actually produce more negativity than positive effects, right? There's certain people maybe who we know are always going to respond in just great anger and be super antagonistic if we ever try to talk to them about the gospel. Now, we need to be very careful about assuming they've reached that point, right? And I think we need to have made many attempts before we stop, right? But there are just certain topics, whether it be about Christianity, something else, that it's probably just wisest not to engage in. And where Jesus says it's going to kind of be like throwing out something precious that's just going to get trampled on. I remember a pastor I respect who he had an opportunity to go on, I forget what it was, but he had the opportunity to go on some, daily news show, and they were going to talk to him about his beliefs on some hot topic or whatever. And I remember him saying, this guy is very bold, not afraid to speak up for the truth. And I remember him saying, I said no, because I knew that would just throw me to the wolves. I guess it's not going to have any good effect. Now, we can We can debate how we would have handled that. But I remember at the time I thought, oh man, like what in the world? That was a great opportunity. What were you thinking? Now I can see there may have been some wisdom in that. I can't say for sure. Don't know enough of the details. But he saw an opportunity and said, you know what? I've got more profitable places to be talking. Okay, so wisdom holds back is the main point in lots of different ways. What do you guys think? We've all had that temptation. Even those of us who, like me, who are more quiet, we've all had the temptation to just let everything that's on our minds just kind of spill out on someone. What do you guys think makes us want to say everything that's on our minds to someone? There's probably a few answers. Okay, we'll start with Emily and then Lonnie.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, it makes me think of people who think they can vent. It's just the idea of venting, thinking it's okay, that I got to get my feelings out or whatever. But I think it's pretty convicting. There's a proverb, Proverbs 29:11, a fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. Somehow we think it's okay to just spill it out because we got to get it out, but that's not literally biblically okay.
It's interesting that he literally uses the word vent there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Lonnie, go ahead.
I was just going to speak maybe a little different perspective from somebody like personally. I need to sometimes hear my thoughts out loud so that the Lord uses that to help me understand what is in my heart. And I don't really know until I speak it. But where that's dangerous is I can do that with God. I can do that in prayer. And so sometimes I can do that with a person and it's actually not wise.
Sure.
I just need to do it with the Lord. And sometimes I can do it with somebody and they can help me figure out what's in my heart. But for me, wanting to vent usually is I have some confusion or some strong emotion and I want to figure out what it is. I want to grow or change or whatever from it. So if I just get it all out, then sometimes I see what's there that I didn't know before.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, right? Because I think a lot of people are that way, right? That they think kind of by talking things out, And I think what you said, right, talking to the Lord is great. I also think that there are times, though, like you said, you don't want to default to this and be unwise, but there may be times where it is wise to go to a trusted person, right, who is not going to repeat stuff, like Mark or somebody, right, and you're not the repeater, you're the wise person in this illustration, right, and say, hey, I'm thinking about saying this, what do you think? This is kind of how I'm thinking of saying it, right? Give you a chance to get it all out, and then the person can give you feedback. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think a lot of folks in the room would relate to that. Thanks. Morgan, go ahead.
I think the key for me on venting has been, what is my heart posture? Is my heart posture that I have a right to say these things because this person just needs to take it because I feel this way and I'm angry and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or is my heart posture, I can't make any sense out of anything right now.
Yeah.
Trusted person, am I being bitter? Is there bitterness in my heart here? What are some questions? Like literally, I just did that a few weeks ago with somewhere I was like, I can't tell if I'm bitter or if I'm just hurting. Can you help me figure this out? Your heart has to be, I don't want to sin against the Lord.
Yeah.
I need to draw this out of my heart. Jesus, will you help me, trusted person? And really give that person the opportunity to say, you know what, sister, you're being bitter.
Sure.
And there's no place for that if the gospel is real and true. And I can understand why you're hurt, but you're giving ear to things and you're letting Satan get a grip in your heart. But we have to give people permission to do that and be okay if the response is not what we want it to be.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to do. So it's like, if we're going to use our words in that way, we need to check our heart to be like, am I actually willing to hear the response I don't want to hear?
Yeah.
Which is hard.
I think that's really important, right? To just think that I can just pour something out on someone and them not be allowed to speak back into my heart. I think that says a lot about my heart, yeah. I remember when Andrew was going through James, you came up with a way to distinguish between the way we look, talking to someone for the purpose of advice and stuff like this versus gossip. Do you remember what that was? No, it's been too long. If you think of it, just tell me later. I was trying to think of it this week and I couldn't remember. Okay, what else comes to mind? What makes us want to say everything that's on our minds? What's oftentimes behind that? I think pride, right? Sometimes we think we know, we think that, we're right, we think whatever. Yeah, pride for sure. What makes us want to say everything that's on our minds? Yeah. I think sometimes we're just so eager to like help and fix it, you know what I mean? And again, that may be pride, or that could be a fairly good motive in that moment. But there's also a need for humility, isn't there? To recognize that I can't ultimately fix anybody's problems, right? And God has to be the one who's going to get a hold of this person's heart. He may use me, he may not use me. That kind of frees us up from thinking that we always have to raise our voice every single time something comes up. All right, anything else? All right, let's keep moving then. Number 5, okay. That being said, wisdom holds back. Wisdom also speaks up. There are times where not responding is the wrong thing to do, right? So let's go to chapter 26, verse 5. Notice, verse 4. First, answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. And then immediately after, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. So it shows this isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal here. There are times where answering would just pull me into sin and to a bad situation. But there are other times where, it would be the most loving thing to speak up to this person, right? To lovingly confront them because they need humility, right? They're wise in their own eyes. And God needs to humble them, and he may use me to be a part of reaching them. So there are times to speak up. Another one would be Proverbs 31, 8 and 9. Notice, open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open up your mouth for people who can't speak for themselves. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy, right? When we're coming to, that's particularly when we're coming to someone's defense is a time where we may need to speak up, all right? What are some opportunities God has given us to speak up for other people? What are some good opportunities he's given us for that? Yeah, Mark.
There's times as a police officer that, I gotta watch because I'm half deaf from being in the military.
No, you're good.
So now I'm not gonna scream in the microphone. So, what was I saying now?
Times at being a police officer.
What was the question though?
Opportunities God's given you to speak up for people.
Yeah, so in law enforcement, especially when being like on the board of NAMI, there's people that are mentally ill that nobody was advocating for.
Yeah.
And that's where the Lord kind of gave me some authority in a way to advocate for them to make sure they were getting the help that they needed versus just kind of leaving them to be and let the system try to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking up for people with mental illness, special needs, whatever you may think of. Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. Oftentimes those people can't speak up for themselves. And sometimes, let's just be honest, sometimes people who have those kind of things they're wrestling with, sometimes they receive very unfair treatment and other people say some things about them that they shouldn't, And so I think in those times we need to speak up many times. Okay, what else? Laura?
The unborn child.
Absolutely, yep. I would talk about an example of a defenseless person needing to be spoken up for, the unborn, yeah. Zach, in the back there, behind you, Tim.
I was actually going to ask a follow-on question, but
Yeah.
so I don't want to take you away from more examples of speaking for the mute.
You can ask a follow-up, go ahead.
Sorry. It's back on 26.5. So what are some tools that we can use to answer the fool? Like, how do we answer the fool? We've talked about waiting, picking the right time, but where's the actual action in answering the fool, and where's the discernment? Or where's the how do we take that step to do that? Because I think we might wait, we might pray about it, we might not say anything, but we have to take that step at some point.
Right. Yeah.
And we can use those things as a crutch, like, well, I think I'm just waiting. I think, no, this isn't the right time either.
It's true.
This isn't the right time. Because there's a lot in the New Testament about going and preaching and sharing the gospel, being a light, being, aggressive is the wrong word, but being
Bold.
forward.
Yeah.
And we talk about the gospel being offensive to some and some. So I think we need some discipleship training in that. Like, how do we take that step to be, even though we may risk being offensive or whatever, you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll say a few thoughts, and anyone else who has something can chime in too. I think it starts with the heart, right? To be examining, okay, what you said is really true. There are times where we might use some of the previous stuff we've said as an excuse. Well, I'm just waiting around. So where's my heart? Is it? Am I being motivated by fear of man? We're going to talk about that in a minute if we have time. Or am I really seeking to love this person and to do what's best for this person? Obviously, I would just say as much as we can ground what we're saying biblically, the better. I mean, that's where the real power is at, not in our own abilities, but in pointing people to God's truth. If it's an issue that's not necessarily biblical, I think, as much as we can speak from having done our homework and actually knowing what we're talking about, I think that goes a long way. And then approaching someone, like we said, as much as possible with gentleness, you know what I mean? Rather than just going in guns blazing. Now, sometimes Jesus was very bold with people in a very confrontational way, right? So there are times where it escalates to a pretty high point. But most of the time, if we can come in with gentleness, we get farther actually in that way, I think. There's a few things that come to my mind. Obviously, pray. Pray a lot about that for yourself and for the other person. Jim, go ahead.
Working in the prison, you get all kinds of opportunity to, first of all, if a guy needs to hear something and he's not really trying to hear it, or he just needs to hear it, if I just take a deep breath, because a lot of times they're coming at me personally, take a deep breath, calm down, and just lower my voice, and because something needs to be said. Now that being said, there's been many a times in the course I teach where they're just saying the most ridiculous nonsense. I had one here last month that this guy was bragging about how he's been selling drugs for 40 years and how it's worked out pretty good for him. It's his first number and this and that. And I said, okay, brother, I'm going to come at you pretty hard, so prepare yourself. And I just drilled into him, basically just called him a wicked man in front of about 19 other guys. And he stood up to walk away, and I said, dude, calm down. You need to hear this. But I was coming at him hard, but at the same time letting him know, brother, I'm trying to help you because I love you.
Yeah.
But because you sound crazy right now, and you don't even realize it. So, and then other times, one I had a couple months ago, I was in a DEI class with the state, and I was like, oh, here we go. It's not worth it. Don't say nothing. But we just have to say things, particularly when they're going against God's truth. This needs to be said, and we need to stand up for truth in a loving way, not in an arrogant way, So there's a time to speak, but through it all, we have to let them know that we love you, regardless,
Yeah. Yep. Tim.
I think also one of the benefits of waiting for a reply, especially in a difficult situation where we're in a conflict or we need to say something to somebody, we're not sure what to say, is for me, it's been helpful to use the body of Christ. Meaning, talk to a friend, call somebody up, talk to an elder, just share that situation, and other people can sometimes, and that's just seeking counsel, I guess, as part of wisdom there. But rather than jumping in and saying something we might regret, bounce it off of a few people that we trust.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Last comment, and then we'll wrap up here. Randy's running.
I taught middle school for 33 years. And if you can create the environment, take them out in the hall, and come with authority, not your authority, but God's authority.
Yeah.
And let them know that, but not to, if you can pull them away to a time when it's just the two of you, I think that has a lot of benefit to it.
Sure. Yeah.
Create the environment.
Trying to do it in a non-public way is generally gonna work out better. Yeah, for sure. All right, Jim, we just scoot through these. We're not gonna go through everything, but wisdom speaks honestly. Of course, right? There's a lot about lying lips in Proverbs and the damage of that. 7, wisdom knows that the ability to say the right thing doesn't always mean you're wise. I'd encourage you to read those passages later on your own time. Knowing the answer in your head doesn't mean that we're walking in wisdom. Number 8, wisdom listens to the right people. This kind of goes to what Tim was saying a moment ago. Wisdom shuts out voices that aren't going to be helpful and gets wise counsel from the right people. And number 9, this is the most important thing. Wisdom talks like Jesus, right? If you want a model of situation to situation, how to handle people, when to speak, when to be silent, when to be gentle, when to be a little more bold with folks, Jesus is the best example. Just read through the Gospels, all the various ways that he interacts with different people. I think it's deeply helpful to look at that. And then just let me lastly say, if you read through, on your own time, those Ray Ortlund quotes, be sure to read the last one. Jesus died for our rash words. Right? Jesus died for the times that we have sinned with our mouths, as every single one of us in this room has at one time or another, right? So we just need to bear that in mind as we do with any time we come across what the Bible teaches us. Right? There's forgiveness, there's grace, there's the blood of Christ, his righteous life. He never spoke an evil word, not once. That covers us. And in light of that, we can move forward and we can begin to change, right, in the power of his Spirit.